You're watching the Restoration Industry Book Review, a podcast that encourages roofers, flood and fire mitigation contractors to continually learn and grow to improve their businesses and lives. I'm Matt Danskin, a training consultant best known for teaching restoration contractors to consistently develop productive referral relationships with insurance agents. I'm sitting down with experts from across the industry to dive into the books that help them improve and make an impact on the restoration industry. What's going on, everybody? We are back for episode 6 of the Restoration Industry Book Review. I've got the author and head coach at Contractor Coach Pro, Jim Johnson, on the show today. It's just going to be him and I as we go through the book that he has just finished writing, Work on It, Not in It, The Contractor Strategy Blueprint. And this book is literally... I read this book over Google Drive because it's yet to go into print. He went out on a sabbatical. I'll let him tell you the whole thing about it, and just came out with it. They're putting the final touches on it, and I think it's going to be a great tool for contractors in this industry. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jim Johnson on here. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks, Matt, for having me on. I've seen a couple of episodes, and this is great. Like getting contractors to read. Whoa, who would have thought, right? That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So, and that's really the reason that I started this. And you were one of the first people that I reached out to about these episodes. Is I knew for my business, I wanted to align myself with people that were continually learning, that were looking to grow, and that were putting in the work to do that. And I knew that I actually reached out to you before I knew that you were writing a book. And you're like, oh, by the way, I've got this going on. So, Jim, tell the audience, most of these people probably already know you, but in case they don't, who you are, what you do, man.
So, like I said, Jim Johnson, head coach at Contractor Coach Pro. And 7 years ago, I was literally sitting in prayer about, like, what do I do next? I was working at AccuLinks. I was the director of sales there, and I really liked what I did. And I'm big on technology. I'm always big on like cutting edge, moving the industry forward. And I got this thing in my prayer that said, serve, and to go out and resign. And I was like, wow, this is the first time I've ever resigned from anything, that not having the next thing to do. And so I resigned, flew back home. And that next day, my grandfather went into the hospital. And I got to spend the last 3 months of his life with him. And it was an incredible experience to be able to do that. If I wouldn't have resigned, that wouldn't have happened. And I got to share some pretty amazing time with him and learn things that I never knew about him. And he left me with some pretty good guidance. And I remember he was asking me, like, what are you going to do now? I said, I have no idea, really. He goes, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a coach. I want to be a coach. He's like, what kind of coach? Basketball coach. He goes, like, what kind of basketball coach? College basketball. He goes, hey, you got a little bit of a late start there. What else do you know? I said, well, I know this contracting thing pretty well. He goes, have you ever thought about coaching that? And as I kind of thought about it, the whole time at AccuLinks, you would go into a contractor's office and talk to him about software and show it to him, demo it, and they think it was cool, and most of the time buy it. But then it was like 2, 3, 4 hours. They would drill me with questions because they knew I had owned a pretty good sized contracting business for a while. And they wondered how we had 100 people working for us and selling for us, and how we had these locations and how we had our systems and process. I said, somebody maybe could probably help with this stuff. And so in the beginning, it was just kind of like I'll help a few people out. And it went really well. Those companies did really well. We went 2, 4, 8, 10, like max I coached was like 22 at a time. And for every one I coach is like 3 hours a week. So you can kind of do some math of like how many hours that was.
Yeah.
And so it's become a thing. Like it was something that was valuable. And over that time is why I've written the book. over that time, these 7 years, I kind of knew what I was going to start with. I knew culture was important. I knew accountability was important. I knew developing systems and processes and that type of stuff, training programs, hiring programs. And I knew those things, and I knew I could help in those things. But then what I started to realize over time is that those things are all interrelated to each other. And most contractors, they come to us for one thing. I want to grow and scale my business. I'm like, that sounds great. What do you want to do? I want to hire a bunch of people. Like, we can certainly teach you how to do that. We're really good at it. But I have a question for you. If you hire all those people, how are you going to train them? And it gets really quiet. And then it's like, well, I'll put him with my good guy. He'll run out in the field, and that kind of thing. Or, I'll use this, learning platform, whichever one it is. But it's not really a training program, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time that training is maybe 2 or 3 days. And then it's like out in the field, and then it's learned by fire, right? And it needs to be more than that. I mean, these big companies that you see that do 400, 500, 800, now pushing $1 billion in business in some of these businesses, they train every day, every single day.
Yeah.
It's part of what they do. It's part of their culture. And so, like, you would walk it backwards, like, okay, so if you train all these people, how are you going to produce all this stuff you're going to train people to? Like, how is that going to happen? Then how are you going to sell all that stuff? And how are you going to market? And what technology you're going to use? And so you work it all the way back, and it goes all the way really back to leadership and culture. And so over time, I started to realize that those things were happening in order. So we started putting in order what we were coaching. And so we started doing the strategy conference about 4 years ago. A good friend of mine, Zach Kerr from Sales Rabbit, I don't know if you know those guys or not. He came and spoke at the conference, and he stayed and listened. He was listening on the whole conference, hung out for a while. We got done. He goes, dude, you need to write a book about this. I'm like, wait, that's not really on my agenda. I've thought about writing a book, but really and truly, the book, if I was like going to write a book, probably some fantasy novel or something like that. I was a big Hobbit kid back in the day. And he goes, no, I have never seen this before. And it's actually valuable, this order of things and the strategy behind it, and then the tactics involved. I've never seen anybody put it like this before. And he's been the CEO of like really big, huge companies.
Yeah.
And so that was like 3.5 years ago. And so I started writing. I think I got about a quarter of a chapter done in 3.5 years, and started getting frustrated, really just getting frustrated and not getting the time, and distractions get in the way. And I know who I am. I'm a person that works in sprints. I'm not a marathoner. And so I got approval from my team. They gave me 2 weeks to go off on a sabbatical and write this book. And I did, 12 days, 12 hours a day. And it turned out good. I am proud of it. It's not a thing of my ego or any of that kind of stuff. It's something I'm proud of. Whether one person buys it or nobody buys it or any of that kind of stuff, that's not really important to me. I think what I put out, hopefully, is something that helps contractors start to understand this concept of strategy behind their business.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us think tactics, right? And so, like, I'm going to market this way, or I'm going to hire that way, and those are tactics. That's not strategy. And like, how do you put your business together strategically to truthfully put yourself in a position to work on it and not in it?
Right.
Which is great. I think that's the goal of every person that opens a business. I don't think their goal is to see how many hours a week they can work in their business, going and selling or filling up paperwork or doing that kind of stuff. I think that what they really want to do is be an owner of their business and work on it to grow it. They're still working, they're still putting in the hours, but they're working on the opportunity and growth aspect of their business instead of the day-to-day operational side of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, being in the consulting world as well, it's kind of funny. I sent an invite to a contractor friend of mine to this show, and he was like, "Why are you having Jim Johnson on there?" And I'm like, "Well, because Jim's awesome, And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, no, nothing against Jim. He's like, "But isn't he your competition? Like, you guys are both consultants." And I was like, "Nope, not at all." I like the fact with what I'm doing, it's very specialized. It's this much of the process, and it is just a piece of the puzzle. And you guys are doing, you're taking the whole thing all together. And I think it's totally different. And so to me, I don't look at it as competition at all, simply because if someone's working with you, for instance, that doesn't make me go, oh, well, they can't be my client. That makes me go, oh, they actually know that they need to train and improve, and vice versa.
This actually works quite often in the industry. There's several there used to not be any, right? Like it was not such a thing. And there was like two, and they were kind of bigger organizations that weren't really contractor based; they were more just business based. And so I got in this, started doing it, and then one pop up, another one pop up, and stuff like that. And most of them are pretty niche, like a sales consultant or a marketing consultant.
Yeah.
All the different things, recruiting and hiring consultant. And that's cool. Those are tactics. And we can certainly help with tactics too, but what we're really most focused on is the holistic part of the business. There's really 12 pieces of our business that we need to look at on the whole and have a strategy behind. And every company has a little bit of a different personality to them. I mean, for example, I'm here in an office of one of my clients, and their strategy is door knocking. It's what they do. Mm-hmm. They don't do Facebook. They don't do. And so I would send them to consultants that are really strong in door knocking, and get them working with folks like that. Like I sent these guys to Jonah to work with him, and he's awesome. I don't dig that deep into the tactical side of things. We dig into the strategic side of things, set the business up right, get all the processes and systems. There's a bunch of consultants that send people to us because they're really good at marketing. You generate all these leads, but the company can't handle them. There's no processes, no systems, there's none of that kind of stuff. So they need us. So they send them to us. We figure all those out. Now all those leads become something that's uber valuable. Same thing for recruiting. Like, hey, we recruited a bunch of guys for these people and they all left. Well, their leadership and their culture was no good. And we need to get that strategy figured out of who we're going to be and why we're doing what we're doing. We can figure all that out. Those people will stay. And so that's how we approach what we do is we get that foundation put in place, and then you can go work with those individuals that are going to really dig in that one area if you like. And we kind of dig in pretty hard in the leadership and culture, accountability, finance, and organization. We have specific coaches for that right now. But I send people to guys all the time. And just like I would send people to you, if it fits into the strategy that they're after, like, hey, man, you want to go after all those insurance agents? I know your guy. Yeah. I know that stuff too, and we can set the basic structure up, but this guy's going to take you to the Uber level with that stuff. So
right. Yeah. And I mean, to that point, if a client's production, for instance, is totally dysfunctional and garbage, he's not going to be able to handle referrals from insurance agents. He's going to get one referral, right? And that's going to be the last one. And so, that's a great point. All these tactics can be really helpful, but if they're not part of a cohesive whole unit that's working well together, you're going uphill. I'll say that at least. So, Jim, I want to ask you. We talked a little bit about this podcast, but tell me about. I know you just wrote this book, and we're focusing on this book, but reading in general for both you and your clients. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, we were kind of laughing about it when we were talking a little bit earlier. This concept of contractors reading. When we get in with our coaching, and the first thing we start talking about is leadership, because we need to understand who we are as leaders, what kind of leader we are, what our personality is as a leader, and then the skill that's necessary to be a leader. And one of those skills is education. We talk about this habit of being educated and getting education, not just for your people, but for you. I read on average between 40 and 60 books a year. I read consistently all the time a lot. It's something I've been doing ever since I was very young. My mom probably created that habit for me, to be honest with you. And it's been extremely valuable to me. And I always talk about it with my clients. I'm like, there's two different kinds of books for what we do. There's the motivational and inspirational type books, which are great. I mean, I think those are good. And I think people go back to them quite often. But then there's the strategic and tactical books. And those books are like workbooks. Like you should write in them, you should take notes, like all that stuff. And I get all this all the time. Well, I'm Audible, right? I'm an Audible guy. So I'll go get the Audible of it. I'm like, that's great. When do you listen to that? Well, I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to it. So how much of that do you really retain? And studies have said, things that you hear verbally, you retain about 10% for 24 hours. You lose 2% every day after that till the fifth day, and you retain 2% of whatever it was that you heard without any kind of reinforcement. So if you don't listen to that book often, you gain no more out of that book than 2%. But if you sit down and you read and you see it on paper, that retention goes up by about 5 times. So now you're only retaining about 10% instead of 2, but it's better. But if you take a pen and you start making notes, or you highlight things on Kindle, you make a note on Kindle, you write in the borders and you underline stuff, your retention goes up about 25%. So that way of looking at books is, if it's motivational, inspirational, man, listen to it all you want. That's great. Like, it fires you up and you want to go do and get after everything that you want to get after. But if it's strategic and tactical, read that book, take notes, do the work. That kind of stuff it's just super important to how to read a book. And I tend to be the type of person, I'll read a book through, and if it's strategic and tactical, I'll go back. I'll start pulling out the pieces that I want to start applying to whatever it is I'm doing at that time. And it's been an extremely valuable way for me to read a book, and it's been really great for our customers.
Yeah. I'll say, I was telling you this earlier, I divulged the secret that I haven't been an avid reader in most of my adult life until I started this. And it was kind of one of those things where I was like, you know what? I know I need to be doing this. I'm not just going to start reading. I'm going to have a reading podcast, and I'm going to read a book every single week, and I'm going to talk to people in depth about those books. And I'm going to give myself accountability to do it. But I'm just making the decision that this is what I'm going to do. And I've always been somebody that's an avid learner. I'll watch video content. I'll read stuff on websites. I'll read pieces of books here and there, but not just read a book from beginning to end. And this has been, this is week 6, and I've been cheating. I'm on Audible reading the book for next week as well. And so, I'm like a third of the way through that one. But 6-7 books, and it's amazing how much in my consulting, in my regular, my personal life, whatever it is, that I'll run into circumstances where I'm like, you know what? I've got a better way to handle that circumstance because of this book that I just read. And that toolbox that you build, every book that you're consuming, you're building that toolbox. And so you have more and more tools to handle whatever situations you're coming into better than you would have without that information, right?
You know what that's called?
Knowledge? What?
It's called mindfulness. So you've read something, it's fresh in your mind, so it's top of mind, and so you're applying it to the world around you, right? But as time goes on, that book you read on week 1, 52 weeks from now, there'll be a lot less you pull from that book unless you go and reinforce it, unless you took notes, unless you kept some kind of a journal on it.
Yeah.
And the book that you read the week before will be the one that's top of mind and you're applying most often to what it is that you do, which is super valuable. It's a gaining of knowledge, gaining of wisdom. And you tend to parse out the most valuable pieces of each one of the books. And that's really how our coaching has kind of developed is, like I said, I read all the time. I read tons of books. And a lot of what, and I even talk about this in the book, is some of the things that you're going to see in here are things that I have learned from other books. I made notations of them, where it came from and things like that.
Yeah.
But putting them in the order in which they are, I've never seen anybody do before. I've never seen this like, well, okay, I want to do accountability for my team. That sounds great. What's your culture like? Now, you can't do accountability without understanding what your culture is. And these things relate to each other so tightly that if you do one of them out of order, for example, the biggest one I see done out of order, great sales guy, he goes off and starts his own business. He's really good at sales. He's also really good at recruiting. And he goes out and recruits a bunch of guys and brings them in and says, hey, let's go sell. but there's no systems, there's no process, there's no training, there's no order, and everybody's doing it their own little different way. And they wonder why at some point everything gets into this chaos mode. I'm a firefighter now. I'm not able to work on my business anymore. I'm constantly putting out fires with homeowners and paperwork, and a guy that's upset because he didn't get paid on what he thought he should get paid on. It's all because of that upfront stuff that he didn't do that should have probably been done. And I'll be honest, as a contractor, I did the same thing. I didn't know. I was really good at sales. I was really good at recruiting. I was pretty good at marketing. Those were the three strengths I had. If I would have known at the time that I needed to be strong in finances and numbers, if I needed to be strong in accountability, if I needed to be strong in culture, my business would have flourished much sooner. And yes, I would have been more working on the upfront. It would have taken me a little longer to get everything in place. But then once I put people into that system, it's like setting a wildfire.
Yeah.
And maybe wildfire isn't the thing I should relate it to right now. Everybody's dealing with some big issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. So one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about on the consulting side, because that's kind of a common thread between the two of us. For me, when I started consulting, which I'm newer at this than you are, I felt like I had something really valuable and good to offer to the market. And my clients loved it. It worked well or whatever. But I've found that by talking to a number of different clients every single day, all day long, solving problems, it's like a pressure cooker for learning. And I would say, like, I've learned so much from my clients, which I'm then able to transfer that knowledge back to all my clients. And it's, little pieces here and there, little different situations. You know what? Hey, this worked. This guy that's 3 states away from you, he's got this position, and that's really helped them out. Sorry, my camera is acting up on me.
No worries.
I wanted to know, is that something that you've experienced, something that you've seen?
This book would not even exist without our customers. It's just that when I first started coaching, there was like 7 or 8 things. And through this coaching, we started to learn that there was more. Like, we used to start with culture. And we would do culture, we would do accountability, we would do process, and go on through the rest of our stuff. And what we realized is that some of the guys weren't having success. I'm like, what's going on here? Why are they, like, we're giving them what they need. They got all the tools. And what we found out is that they weren't good leaders. They weren't able to connect with people. They didn't understand the right habits. They didn't understand who they were as a leader. They didn't get any training as a leader. And leadership isn't like this God-given talent. Somebody touches somebody and goes, hey, you're a leader. Woo, yeah, you're born that way. It's a set of skills and habits that we put together that people want to be a part of, whatever it is that you're going after. And if we don't know how to do that, all this other work, it's worthless. It's a waste of time. And some people are good charismatic leaders, like they can get people excited. But if they're dealing with turnover and they feel like chaos is happening in their business, they don't have leadership skill. They have charisma, and that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Leadership skill involves really these 7 things. I talk about them in the book. There's these 7 habits that they're like cyclical. You're constantly doing them all the time. And by doing them, you start getting buy-in, you start getting activity, you start getting discipline, you start getting results. And in the end, you actually get belief, which is what we're after. People believing in us as leaders and having respect enough for us to say, hey, I want to be on this guy's team. This guy's going to take me someplace that I've never been before. And that was kind of one of the bigger epiphanies of the book, is kind of putting those together and saying, this is how they all work together. And it's not something you can stop. It's like, once you decide, hey, I'm going to do this business thing, you got to be this person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate that perspective. Jim, I want to talk to you, something we've talked about personally here. And it's amazing because without even intending it, it's come up on just about every one of these episodes. And that is faith. I know we've talked about that. I've heard you speak on that. And I think that is hugely important. Obviously, in what we're doing in our businesses and contracting, integrity is vital, right? And I have a hard time figuring out how the heck you have integrity if you don't have faith. But it's another one of those, all the systems holistically have to work together, right? But I know one of the things that I appreciate about you is that is a huge piece of who you are. I know, but it's not like, hey, come get my consulting because I'm a Christian too. It almost wrenches my gut when I see contractors that are like, hire me because I'm a Christian. No, you need to go out there, present your value, and let that show through in what you're doing. But sorry, I don't want to speak for you here, but tell me, I know you talk about your faith some in the book, and I think this book is still 100% valuable for somebody that doesn't have religion or faith or whatever you want to call it. But tell me about how it plays a role in what you do.
First of all, none of this is possible without God. It just isn't. And you can see it. It's funny. I've been up here meeting with some contractors, and two of them are very faith-based contractors, and one not so much. And the two that have the best cultures. They care. You can see the care. It's real. It's palpable. It's an air in the building, and the other not so much. Well, I can tell you that the two are doing better than the other. Sure. And that's not anything against that particular mode, and it's not something that's necessary. I actually write about that in the book. Is like there's a lot of ways to be successful. It's just which one is the one that's fulfilling. And before I went to go write this thing, I had a lot of prayer over it, and there was a piece of me, and I think that was maybe the dark side piece of me, or the fear side of me, or whatever, that said just write a business book, and just do that. You don't want people to quote unquote, oh, he's a Christian, I'm not going to read this book, right? Because of whatever they've dealt with from other Christians out there. And I try not to. I talk about it, yes, but I'd rather people see it more from my actions than from my words, and that I am consistent. I stick to it, and I don't. One of the things I see all the time, this is one, if you don't have haters, you're doing something wrong. And I'm sure there's probably somebody out there that doesn't like me, and that's okay. I get that. But I wouldn't say I have I think like if you're kind to people, you're loving to people, it's pretty hard to hate them. It seems difficult. Everybody that's nice to me, I try to be nice back. And I think that's important. I think that's important from not just a business side of things. I think it's important from just a human. You're another human. I want to be good to you. Like the people say we're competitors, right? And they would think that we would have this issue between the two of us. There's actually competitors I work with, like Danny Kerr, Breakthrough Academy, does a very similar thing to what we do.
Yeah,
we're very much the same. Love that guy. Great guy. Good human. I want to help him do what he does. If they don't fit for us, I want him to go to him. And he says the same thing. If they don't fit for us, I want him to go to you. And I get that. There's the right person for everybody. But I prayed a lot about this, like before I left. And one of the things I determined that whenever I went is every day I would wake up, I would do a devotional and a meditation each morning before I would write. And the thing I asked most for is, God, don't let these be my words, let these be your words. That's what I want. I want these to be your words, and I want them to help others. I want them to help others in a way that glorifies you. That's what I want. Whether they're Christian or not, their actions are Christian-like. That they love one another, not the hypocritical side of Christians that we see sometimes, but the two basic concepts: love God, love your neighbor. And so I included some scripture at the end of each chapter. I talked about some of the prayer moments in my life, and I think it kind of added to the story, like a little bit of the impact side of it, like how important this was to me to do this in a way that wasn't about me. I don't want it to be that way. It's really about my contractors and the people that I've coached. They've given us a lot of great information, and God's put me in places that have given me this opportunity to gather this piece of knowledge to hopefully share with other folks.
Yeah, I can I can tell already. I know the book's not in print in people's hands yet, but I can tell already that this is going to make a huge difference in a lot of businesses in a way where people that are their business is in dysfunction, their lives are out of control because of it, are going to improve. They're gonna at least move the needle just because of the information in this book. And I talk a lot about this show. We're most of every book that we've reviewed has been about a $20 book, and both you and I charge a whole lot more than $20 per client. But I want to bring this because there's some of the contracts that I talk to, like, hey, I'm not going to invest all that money. Okay, cool. We're not a fit. No big deal. But if you don't care enough about your business to spend $20 on it, you should just board it up right now. And maybe you don't like me and you don't want to pay me thousands of dollars or whatever. Cool. Pay $20 just on a chance. Imagine it's a lottery ticket. This is a really, really good chance of paying off big time. Your $20 lottery ticket. So instead of getting your big bucks, go get work on it, not in it, and actually apply this stuff. And I think we talked about this just a little bit. This book kind of works twofold. Number one, it gives somebody a really low barrier of entry to get a lot of value, for, like I said, $20 or whatever the book ends up costing, something in that ballpark. And they get a lot of information that they can go and use. And if what you talk about in the book aligns with them and their culture, then now they know, hey, this is probably somebody is worthwhile to invest more into their actual training, and working with them one-on-one to get into my business. But I implore people, buy books, buy this book, buy other books. These tiny amounts of money that you can invest are going to have huge dividends for you. And I know, we talked about this as well. This is going to be kind of a sales thing for you. I think it's going to help your sales because people are, instead of whatever an exploration call, that's what I call them. I don't know what you guys do when you first introduce yourself to a customer or a client. What's that?
It's a strategy call.
Strategy call. Instead of them, spending whatever 30 minutes on the phone with you, you guys starting to interact or whatever, they've got chapter after chapter after chapter where they can really see what you guys are all about, how all this works. And they're going to get a lot of value from that, even if they don't take that next step. But I think a lot of people are going to see, okay, this is working. I want to put this into overdrive with some real people at the helm, helping this happen.
Yeah. While I understand that that's a strategy, right? Put a book out, gives you authority and that kind of stuff. Like that's kind of a marketing piece I see a lot of people do. I intentionally didn't write it that way.
Yeah.
Now I understand that it will be something like that, but I wanted to give enough information that if a person was accountable enough to themselves, they could go do it. And so that's the intention of the book. It's why we're going to charge for the book. We had some of the readers. We put this out to 44 industry experts, mentors, coaches, C-level executives with billion-dollar companies that just happen to be friends of mine that I know very well. And they're like, so how much are you charging for the book? And I said, we haven't really determined a price yet. I was kind of thinking like maybe give it away for free and really kind of use it as like this marketing tool. And they're like, absolutely not. I mean, this book is worth millions of dollars to anybody that reads it and implements it. You got to charge something for it. I said, okay, so I don't know. And so they've kind of set what a lot of them said charge a lot. And I went, I'm not doing that. It's going to be $20 in soft cover, that 6x9 bigger sized one. And then it'll be under $10 for the Kindle version.
Yeah. Well, and I think that $20 is so little that if you have a business, you can spend $20. Like I said, if you can't invest $20 into your business, you should just close up anyway. But I think they have to have some skin in the game. If you went around and gave this away for free just to put it in people's hands and just to help businesses,
it doesn't have any value. It doesn't have any value. I mean, how many free books have you downloaded and you didn't even read them?
Sure.
It has no value. But if I spend a few bucks on it, I'm going to read it. And I got a pile on my Kindle right now that I still got to get through before the end of the year. It is such a low barrier of entry to gather knowledge and wisdom. It makes it's the most sensical thing of you being able to get to where you want, even above coaching and consulting. The nice thing about coaching and consulting, I always think about this, and you hear this is another statement I hear all the time. Well, you don't learn without failing, right? Like, we got to go out and fail a little. We got to go out and fail a little. We got to go out and fail a little bit. Which there's some truth to that.
Expensive.
But if somebody has already done all that failing and they can teach you everything not to do that, man, why wouldn't I go do that? Like, I had uber fast to get to where I need to be, and then I'll fail on all this big other stuff that I want to go after that there isn't a coach for. I heard that from a Buddhist monk, actually. Like he was talking with Lewis Howes, if you've ever heard of him on podcasts. If you haven't, best podcast. No offense to anybody. I have one. You have one. Hey, I got one too. It's better than mine, so don't get offended. It's called The School of Greatness. It's a great podcast, and this guy was on there. I can't pronounce his name, but it was really good. Like gathering knowledge, like how fast can I gather it and get as much of it as I quickly can, so that I can start to fail in places that people have never failed before. That's really learning. And so that's kind of the value of a coach. Like this guy that I'm working with here, he's my longest term client. I've been coaching him for a little over 4 years now. And God's honest truth, if he walked in here right now, I've tried to fire him multiple times. And I'm like, hey, dude, I'm out. I'm done. I don't have anything else. And he's like, no, you're the cheapest employee that adds the most value to my business each and every year. You're going to work with me until you decide you're not ever coaching anymore. And so it's like you think of them as this person that's hand in hand with you in your business, personally invested in it with you. They care enough to be involved with you. And what's the worst thing that can happen, right? The worst thing that can happen is that I fail you. I won't be in business very long. That's really what it comes down to. So there's constant pressure on us to deliver value. If we don't deliver value, we don't get paid and we're out of business. So far, so good. We've been able to deliver some pretty good value.
Yeah. And, for me, the niche that I'm in, the getting referrals from insurance agents, I tell a lot of people, I literally had hundreds and hundreds of meetings with insurance agents where I got my teeth kicked in. I failed so hard and I had hundreds of those that if you had any one of those, most people would go, I'm not meeting with insurance agents anymore.
Yep.
That's a bad way to do business. And I'm too stupid to take a no and just stubborn. And I started literally, I had meetings where agents would go, I could tell I had bombed already, early in the meeting. And I would just go, look, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out how you can give me business. Can you break it down for me? I know I've already ruined this one, but can you tell me so that I can have a good meeting on my next one? And people would tell me. So if you don't want to buy my training, you can just meet with hundreds of insurance agents and get your face bashed in over and over again.
It's kind of the same thing with what we do.
Buy my stuff, right? Have these, business failures are really expensive and really hard. And those were micro failures.
I always tell people this, like if you're trying to figure out what we do, right? Because it's a big concept. It's a holistic thing. We look at the whole business and we develop all these strategies and systems and processes in all these areas of your business. And sometimes it's a hard concept to grasp. And so I tell people this is the way to think about it. If you feel like you're doing the day-to-day in your business and it's constant, it doesn't stop, and you're on this hamster wheel you can't get off of, if you feel like there's chaos, if you feel like you're having a lot of turnover in your business, you need to talk to us. We can stop those things. We can take all those million hats that you're wearing to try and run your business and put one hat on you that's the owner. And if that's who you want to be and where you want to be, we're the guys for you, and you should at least take our assessment. We got an assessment on our website. They can take this assessment free, doesn't cost anything. If they take it, we'll set up a strategy call with them. That's free as well. It won't cost them anything.
Yeah.
And we'll give them help that day. Like, hey, even if you don't become our customer, here's some things you should do. Because we've genuinely, like, Matt, you mentioned my faith, right? 17 years now, it's been. I was far away from faith 17 years ago. I can remember sitting on the front step of my house and everything I wanted in the world. Big, huge log house, lots of property, cars, boats, and all that other stuff, and feeling awful. Like, what else do I need to go get to make me feel better or like I've arrived or something like that? And again, it was another prayer thing, and the only word that I kept hearing over and over was serve. And I stopped serving me at that point and started serving others, and I've never felt more fulfilled in my life. And that's what I hope that we do in our coaching. I hope that's what we do in our strategy calls. I hope that's what we do with this book, is to serve other people. And if we do a good job of it, it's funny, things come around. It just happens to. It's not why I'm doing it, but it just is what happens. So the more of that I can do, the more of that I can do. I'm here to really and truthfully be a disciple of Christ. That's my job. And we can do this. We can choose to do this business the right way or the wrong way. I want to help people do it the right way and see that they can actually do better that way than the wrong way. So that's really kind of the emphasis behind the book.
Awesome. Jim, I know we've talked about a bunch of different themes here. Before we wrap it up, I just wanted to offer up one more chance. Is there anything that you wanted to speak about specifically that you wanted to touch on with the book here?
Sure, a couple things. Yeah, I got a couple of things. One is a high-level C-level executive is reviewing my book right now and has had some pretty good input and may want to get involved. And so there may be a person that gets involved as a collaborator, a contributor, maybe even a co-author if they bring enough value. So we kind of put the brakes on things a little bit right now. It's still going to come out 1st of November, mid-November, somewhere in there is when
that's really quick. Yeah,
it's going to come out pretty quick. But it's this whole book thing is like something I'm stepping into that I got some coaches. I got a coach. Like, how do I make this thing happen faster? But there's only so fast things can happen, and so I have an editor. It costs thousands of dollars to get your book edited. If you get it done right, you got a publisher, and you got to invest in all that good stuff. And so it takes time to get all these things out. And this is actually going to be in like Barnes and Noble, and it's going to be in real bookstores, which is kind of super cool. I wasn't really expecting that. And it takes a bit of effort to get there. And I was all ready to go after it. We could have got it out by the end of October. And this C-level executive was like, hey, I think I can help you on this and be a part of this with you if you want. And I'm like, dude, anything to make this book better, that's all I care about. I don't care about glory for Jim Johnson. I want a great book for contractors. And we've already made a few changes. So since the first time I did an interview about this, we've made some changes in some of the content and really from a wording aspect of things. I had this concept in there of the type of leader that you are. And it's this villain versus hero. And nobody really wants to be seen as a villain. Very few people. There's a few people that kind of get off on it, like, yeah, I'm the villain. That's cool. But that's not how people want it. So we had to come up with a new word and put some different context to it. And that's from all of this input from these other.
Oh, it was villain when I read that portion.
Yeah, it's been changed.
I gotta read it again.
No, you don't have to read. It's there. It's just not there in the version everybody's reviewing. Okay. Because I want to keep that where it was, so I get all the real content. If it changes and I don't know which happens where and that kind of stuff. So there's some pretty strong new information in there that I don't think I've seen anywhere else before. I wouldn't have written the book if I thought it was something that was just rewriting something else.
Right.
And a lot of that's come from great people that have been my coaches and mentors and really been involved in my life, and I want to make sure they get recognized too. Last thing.
Yeah.
Here's a book review. When we get to talk about my book, that was really cool. But I know you're doing this, and you're kind of asking people like what book, right? You want to do. And so they kind of have this option of what book they want to do. And so I want to refer one to you and maybe to your group of folks here that's listening that they may not have read, and you may not have people really mention it. I'm going to actually give you two.
Okay.
One is called Freakonomics. It was written back in the late 80s. And it really isn't about contractors or even business for that matter. It's about incentive, understanding incentive. And if you got people not doing what you want them to do, it's only because you haven't figured out incentive yet. If you understand incentive and how that works, you can get people to do just about anything you want them to do if you incentivize them the right way. So go read that book, Freakonomics. It's fantastic. The other book is called The Carpenter. It's by John Gordon. It's quick. Those ones you can read in a day. It's just fast, but it's about approach to life, and we've actually adopted some things from that book into our own business as our core values. And our core values as a company is to love, serve, and care. And we have a little sentence that goes with it that if we care enough to willingly serve others, they'll know that we love them. And that book brings home that concept of what that looks like to you as a business owner, as a husband, as a father. I highly suggest that book because it's such a quick read. You gain so much from it. It's like the powerful book. It's really good.
Awesome. Oh, go ahead.
Can I have one more thing? Have you interviewed Matt Grassmeyer
yet? He's going to be on next week's show.
What book is he doing? Is it called The Power of Moments?
Can't Hurt Me.
Can't Hurt Me. Okay. There's another good book out there called Power of Moments that he suggested to me. Completely life-changing. Good book.
Awesome. Yeah, he's an avid reader. So I'm excited to have him on as well. Was that it?
That's it. That's all I got.
Cool. To that end, in terms of recommending books and looking at upcoming shows, I've got the books selected out through about Thanksgiving, the end of November right now. And I still have some guest slots for some of those shows. So if you're watching the show, then you might be the type of person I'd like to have on the show. It's been really great having kind of a one-on-one here, but I like having 2 or 3 guests for a lot of these books too. And so if you've got a book that you want to read, we can do that sometime after Thanksgiving. I have some other books kind of loosely laid out until about January, but we can slip some things in. If you guys want to be a guest, shoot me a message. Let me know. I can have you look at the schedule. We can, because I want to get as many people involved in this as possible. This is a collaboration. This isn't the Matt Danskin show, even though my ego would love that. This is the restoration industry book review. And so I want more people from around the industry. We've had a ton of great guests. We're scraping the barrel now, of course. No, we got a long ways before we're scraping the barrel. We'll just keep recycling all these great guests if we get there. But I've just had hitters so far, and so far that I've got planned out. I got planned out for months, and it's just going to be awesome. So, guys, if you want to be on the show, let me know. I'd love to include more of you in the show. If you have a book you want to recommend, do that as well, and look forward to that. Jim, I'm gonna pull you off screen here. Talk a little bit about next week's show. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate this book that you've written. Appreciate you being on the show, and you have a great day, man.
Hey, thanks, Matt. And one thing, whenever you put this podcast, you approach me with it like, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this podcast." Yeah. I was like, "Dang it, that is such a great idea. I should have done that." This really is a fantastic idea. I think you're doing a good thing for the industry. I got a lot of respect for you and your faith and what you're about. And I see nothing but great success for you in the future. And if you ever want to have me back and review a book, not mine, but somebody else's, I got a ton of them I've read that are really good.
Appreciate it. I'll take you up on that. All right. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Talk to you later. Have a good one, everybody.
All right. Bye now. All right, guys. So the last thing I want to talk about is next week's show. So it'll be Thursday at 3:00 as always. I've got a awesome book and guest list. The book is Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind and Defy the Odds by David Goggins. This guy is a Navy SEAL. I'm about a third of the way in, listening to it on Audible right now. Just an awesome story. And this guy was able to accomplish the impossible. And he shares so far some of the ways that he's able to do that. So I'm really excited to get into that book. You guys, you have a week right now. Download it on Audible. Listen to it before the show. I'm going to be on the show with Armando J. Cox Jr. Out of Denver. Super smart guy. He's got his own show as well. Has his own roofing company. And he's the one that recommended this book. I've also got Graham Desert from Roofing 101 out in, I think he's in San Diego and Kansas City, Missouri, and maybe elsewhere. And then also Matt Grasmeyer with Hail Trace. All three of these guys are just huge leaders in this industry, very smart guys. And so I am excited to get into a really good book with some more really smart people. You guys go to the Restoration Referral System Facebook page, go to events, and I've got several weeks planned out ahead of us. Go ahead and click the I'm going for each of those so that you get notifications and reminders that the show is going to happen. Check it out with us. If you are not in the habit of reading, this can be a way. I'm making more and more of these are going to be Audible readable books. And I know a lot of you guys spend time in your trucks. You've got time to listen to an Audible book, even if it's not soaking in 100%. Get something out of this. And so use this as an opportunity. Use this as a framework to tap into some really good books. You'll get some kind of analysis from other experts on these books. And so I'm excited about that. Let me know in the comments. If you're going to read along with us, I'm stacked up with guests for next week. But thanks for checking out the show. We will see you guys next Thursday at 3 p.m.